Okay. Hey everyone, welcome. This is our leadership huddle for the beginning of April. I guess we're in the middle of April almost. Crazy how that happens. And I'd like to welcome Miss Sarah Zolecki. I met her, I was fortunate enough to meet her and her amazing husband, Tony, at our Teal event in Orlando a couple of weeks ago, and just clicked with Sarah right away. She is funny, she's outgoing, she's kind. It feels like we've known each other forever, and she was so very kind in offering us a Zoom tonight after I talked to her earlier this week. And I thought, coming into leadership roles, a lot of you guys have been promoting so quickly, and it's been really exciting with the momentum of the team. But coming into leadership roles, sometimes we have a bit of conflict, and I thought that Sarah could come and maybe talk to us a little bit about conflict resolution when you're dealing with all different personality types and the best way that we can work through those respectfully together. But before we get into that, first of all, I would like Sarah to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her, and we'll go from there.
Okay, awesome. Well, Christina, first of all, thank you for having me on, and hi everybody. I think majority of everyone that's on is Canadian. Is that true? Okay.
Yeah, I think we've got a few.
Okay. Well, I am a little biased to Canadians. I live in Minnesota. I consider myself an adopted Canadian. I'm close to you guys.
I love it.
I love Canada. I've traveled all over every province. I've been in places that even Canadians haven't been. They're like, "Oh my God, you've been there." I'm like, "Yes, I've even been there." I love their heart. I feel that you guys are just so aligned with just kind of who I am. It's kind of how I grew up. And all that good stuff. So guys, I am super excited to be on, and it's just, I love this business for so many reasons, but I think the main reason that I love this business is just the relationships and the friendships that you get to meet and the lives you get to enrich, and your life that gets to get enriched by so many great people. And Christine is one of those for me. And it's just so cool how just, oh my gosh, like, literally not even 90 days ago, I was like, like she was like a figment of my imagination. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't even know who each other were. And fast forward, here we are today. And I think that's just the beautiful thing about our business is just the collaboration and the building up and just the working together. And, I love that. I mean, I think probably everyone on here is a woman. Is that right? Probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, we're really, I really believe that we're in the era of collaboration, right? Versus the whole competing. And I just think that just focusing on that piece will just take us so far together, where sometimes I have seen, in the past, maybe not necessarily spoken out loud, but a lot of times underlying it's that, underlying, comparison and competing and a lot of that stuff that, I mean, it just crushes you. And, I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I don't want to bore you with it too much, but
Not at all.
I've been super blessed. I've been in this amazing profession for 20 years. I was 21 years old when I first joined the business. I'm 45. I make my home in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My husband and I have been married for 13 years. We actually met at an event in network marketing and fell in love and got married, and here we are. And we have two young kids. I have a son named Hudson who is 6 years old, and I have a daughter named Ava that's 4. And I build this business full time with them. So my life is full. I do have the unique perspective of number one, growing up in this business, but also two, the unique perspective of building at all different stages in your life, meaning I've built a successful business as a single person. I've built a successful business as a married couple. And now I've built a successful business being a mom. And so I feel that I am pretty good at being able to relate to so many different people and just understanding like their headspace, like where they're coming from and that sort of thing. And just, knowing just the ebbs and flows of the business and the different phases. And so it's been really, really cool for me to be able to walk through those and, experience those things. And I've been through school of hard knocks. And one of the things I told Christina that I wish so much is, when I was growing up in this business, I didn't have a lot of female mentors. Matter of fact, I had none. I had 0. And all of my mentors were men, which is great. But let's be real. Like, we're all girls on here. We think different than guys, and we are wired different than guys. And so guess what? It means even though a lot of us, we still might have the same, DMO, right? Daily method of operation inside of our business. We think and do things differently. We connect with people differently, build a rapport differently, close differently, work with relationships differently inside of our teams. And so for me, I struggled for many, many years because I tried to emanate everything that I was saying with this male mentor. And what I was finding is that I authentically wasn't walking in myself.
Yeah.
And I hit my head against the wall for a long time because I felt like I was stuck with, God, I can't figure out how to invite better or follow up better. Like, I thought I had to learn, I had to get better at these skills, when the reality was I knew the skills already. I had all of that. I had all that stuff. But what was happening is I wasn't authentically showing up as me.
Yeah.
And the minute that I started doing that, guess what happened? My whole business completely did a 360. And I've never looked back. But it was a long lesson. Like, it's so funny that that little thing was like at the tip of my nose for years and years and years and years and years. And it was just, a matter of time till it clicked and what have you. But I'm grateful for those other experiences that happened that, molded me to who I am now. But, even before we get started, I think the biggest thing I would encourage you guys is just along your adventure of this business. And I would encourage you to use the word adventure. Sometimes I hear people say, my journey. And I'm like, dude, journey sounds hard and
Yeah.
not fun and not exciting. Like, I'm very careful on the verbiage that I use. I'm like, I want it to be fun. So, as you guys are growing, in your business, I want to encourage you to always just know that, showing up as you is good enough,
Well,
whatever that looks like.
I'm so thankful that you said that, because I think people need to hear it multiple times, because how many times did you hear that before something clicked in your brain and the light bulb went on and you're like, that's what they meant, showing up authentically. And all of a sudden you've released all these fears that maybe you've been hanging on to, like, can I say this? Can I do this? Should I post this? Should I not? Should I say this? Should I not? And you get rid of that and you're just yourself. And it's so funny because that's like a huge aha moment that's clicked for me recently. And people around me maybe thought, oh, well, she is authentic to herself, but I still wasn't being, until all of a sudden I just released all those fears. And that needs to be heard so many times until it clicks for you. So I'm so happy that you said that, Sarah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just, I mean, it was. And I just think just, to that, just every little thing that you're going to go through in your business, just know that, I know some of you guys saw the live that I did with Ray. It's just, always remember you're creating your story, right? And every, rank that you hit in your business, you're going to the next level. And there's going to be new things that you learn and new experiences that you grow through and new, I always tell people, it's like, it's never really going to get easier. You're just going to kind of get better. And so it's like, like for me, I actually I was doing a Zoom earlier with actually a bunch of up and coming leaders in another company in Canada, and I love it. Right. It's like, oh my God, I feed up all these Canadians. But one of the things that we talked about, I totally just lost my train of thought. Oh, shoot.
With the upcoming leaders that you were just on the Zoom with?
Yes. And I cannot even remember. Oh, shoot. I can't believe I just forgot that.
It'll come to you.
It'll come back. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. But, it's just, I remember now. So I think, my whole focus that I work on every year is that I need to be able to reintroduce myself to me. Meaning, like, my whole thing is every year I want to work I want to work as hard on me as possible to where I literally don't even recognize myself, meaning I'm stepping to the next best version of me, whatever that looks like. So I want to encourage you guys that as you're growing, like, don't be afraid to, really work on growing and changing and getting better, even though people might say, hey, you're changing, you're growing, and you should be like, I hope so. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And, know that, like, hey, I need to be striving towards, like, in a year from now, you need to be saying, oh my gosh, I don't even recognize me. Like that needs to be a goal. Like if you're able to recognize yourself all the time, even for me, I even do like 6 months, because it just means you're just getting better, and just growing as a person. Right. So, there's actually a couple of cool books. I don't know why I'm just kind of going off my gut, but I feel like I want to tell you guys a couple of things. So there's 2 books that really changed my life. Number one, there's one book that I think I told you, Christine, about, which is called U Squared.
I ordered it, actually. It's on the way.
Yes. It's called U Squared, by a gentleman by the name of Price Pritchard. And it talks about how a lot of times I think in our life, we tell ourselves like we have to go, we hear these stories of like baby steps, right? Which I get. And it's just like, one by one by one by one. And a lot of times I think what happens in our business is we think like it's got to be that same way. When the reality is, it's like sometimes we might even see people in our company, like they're just like taking off like a rocket, right? And a lot of them are having what I would call quantum leaps in their business. And so this book actually kind of teaches you like how to walk through that and how to have the quantum leaps. It's super awesome. But the second book that really had a defining moment, I had lots of defining moments in it. Matter of fact, I'm great friends with the author, is a book that's called Mach 2. And it's called Mach 2 with Your Hair on Fire. And what's really cool in this book is it's actually a workbook too, which is awesome. I actually maybe would encourage you guys to do it, and you could do it as a book club together. It's a freaking awesome book. But it walks you through about creating your vision. And it talks about like just the art of self-motivation. One of the things that it walks you through, it talks about how like, your life is a movie, and it's like, what's the movie reel like that you're creating, you know what I mean? And that you're replaying over and over again. And what does your perfect movie look like? But it's this whole book, right? And it's not super thick. It's like this big, but it was so impactful in my life. I don't know, 11 years ago. They just released a new anniversary edition with the workbook built into it. I love that. It's just like it's so good, you guys. So, and you can just get it on Amazon, and you can also, I think he has it on Audible too.
Oh, cool.
Like I actually get both because I like to study side by side with it, but I think that you guys would get so much good stuff out of that book. It's just really eye-opening. So it's just called Mach 2 with Your Hair on Fire. I love
it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a great book. So Christine and I were talking, obviously I don't even know when it was, last week. Now I feel like it's like my weeks like run into each other, but we were just talking about how, I was just talking about like, where are the leaders inside of the group? Like, how are they growing? What's happening? What have you? And I was sharing with her, I said, hey, one of the biggest challenges that I had when I first started, growing as a leader, and was just like how to handle conflict gracefully and how to move through it. And she was like, oh my gosh, like, do you want to talk about that? I'm like, okay. So I know that I can typically be heavy, but I promise you, like, I'm not going to go into a big heavy thing. And I know, like, when you hear the word conflict resolution, it doesn't sound very feminine. Those are pretty masculine words. But I want to give you guys I took some notes kind of scattered all over here, but just some stuff that I really work through with just conflict resolution. Because the one thing I'll share with you guys is that, conflict is never going to go away. It's always going to happen. And the bigger your team gets, guess what? I have way more conflict now than I ever had. But it's just because my team is a lot bigger. You know what I mean? Not because anything's going on. It's just because I have more personalities that I'm working with. And the reality is too, is that some people are great with conflict and some people aren't. It's just how they were raised. Like, were they taught how to work through it? Are they, there's just so many different variables, right? And so sometimes you're going to have to teach people how to work through that kind of stuff. And it's a really, really, really important piece. I think too, that as women, sometimes we don't do such a great job with conflict. And I don't know if it's because of, insecurities that we might have, maybe more so than guys, where, it's a lot easier for us to gossip about it than handle it. I tell people a lot of times we act like an ostrich, meaning we, hide from conflict. We don't like confrontation. right? You know, some of you guys might be that are on here might be like, oh my gosh, like Sarah, you're like talking to me. Like I just want like everybody to get along. Why can't we all just get along? Why can't there all be peace? Right. And then when an issue arrives, you're like, oh my God, how do I handle this? Or, oh my gosh, if I just ignore this, it will go away. Or I'll pretend I don't know about it. Or I'll just be the leader that says, hey, I don't know, you got to figure it out and you got to work through it and whatever. Right. So it's like helping people understand, like you've got to be willing to handle and deal with conflict. And one of the things I will tell you guys, one of my notes that I wrote down is that, you know, I think it's really important to like reframe how you look at conflict resolution, because it will help you not have a negative connotation towards it. It will help you actually be super encouraged and actually be excited. Like I've actually kind of like, you know, I've changed my whole mindset on it, where when it does happen, I actually get excited because I'm like, wow, this is going to be a really great learning experience for me. So one thing that I teach my team is I want them to understand, like, conflict resolution, you know, what's so cool about conflict resolution is that it creates what I call teachable moments for people, right? So every time there's a conflict resolution, or a conflict, I should say, in general, that comes up, I get excited where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be such an awesome teachable moment for me to learn, or someone in my team to learn, or that person to learn, or what have you, where I don't scoot away from it right away. It helps me be able to say, hey, listen, I'm gonna hit this head on and deal with it, move forward, and, you know, we keep going. And so I want to encourage you guys to do the same, where, you know, what if you took on that perspective, right? Of, oh my gosh, like, you know, when the crap hits a fan somewhere in a situation, you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to be an awesome teachable moment, right? Like, oh my gosh, like what if you reframe that? Like, how different would you look at it,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Before you address it, how different would you look at it, right? And so that's helped my team so much, right? And so I do want to encourage you guys too. I'm going to give you guys maybe a little bit of verbiage. And so I took a lot of notes. I hope you guys don't mind. I'm going to kind of
No, I think we all have pens.
I just kind of like did a brain dump on stuff that just I personally do from experience with situations that I work through. And you know, one of the things that, you know, I wrote down too is I wrote down, like, you know, understanding too, like when there is conflict, that, you know, we all have blind spots in our business and personal too, right? And so each one of us, we have different interpretations of different things.
Mhm.
And understanding that, you know, when we go in to handle conflict, I always share with people, I'm like, it's about it's about like, oh gosh, what's the word I want to use? What did I write down for my notes? It's about disarming dissension, right? Right away inside of that conflict. So it's kind of like disarming the bomb, right? Before it goes off. Like, how do you actually do that, right? How do you like diffuse that, you know, even before? And I think I want to encourage you guys that, you know, as you go into conflict or different situations, one of the things that I wrote down is I wrote down, like, your number one goal is to restore, like flat out. Like, it's not about trying to prove somebody wrong. It's not about trying to interrogate somebody. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't want someone to feel like they're up in defense or provoking a fight. You know, you want to go in there, and your job is like, how can I disarm this? How can I, you know, move through this with grace? How can I, you know, undo this and honor them at the same time, but maybe also being firm, you know, by saying, hey, listen, like, you know, without maybe saying it, but they know that, like, hey, that's not acceptable. And that's like not going to work in our culture. But I love you. You know what I mean? I love you. But that's not going to work here. Right. Like, how do you move through all that? And it definitely is a little bit of an art, I think, for people, to understand. But, you know, I think too, it's like, you know, one of the things that I wrote down on my notes is, this was some good stuff. This was some old notes that I found. I was like, oh man, this is some good reminders for me. So in here,
Everything shows up at the right time, you know?
yeah. Oh, always. But one of the things I wrote down in here is that, you know, when you are dealing with conflict, like, always coming in with a clean heart. So you come in with good posture, right? So, you know, when you are coming into that, just going in with good motive, you know, going into, you know, there's actually 5 things I'm gonna actually have you guys write down, that when we go into my husband and I, whenever we go into, we know there's conflict that we're having to deal with, we actually walk through it's kind of like a 5-point formula that helps us diffuse, that conflict. I will tell you, some of the conflicts we resolve and some of them we don't. We tried and we can, and this is what it is.
Yeah.
And I tell people, like, your things are not always going to be perfect. You're going to disagree you're going to agree to disagree. There's going to be personalities that clash, but even though the personalities clash, like, there's people on my team that I don't necessarily love or get along with, and they're the same, but guess what? We still honor each other. No one has any idea. We still are totally civil to each other. And it is what it is, right? But I think that, sometimes as girls, like, that doesn't go that way. Like, people know if somebody doesn't like someone, or people know if, they have a conflict, where I'm like, guys, nobody needs to know that stuff. Like, no one should know that stuff. Like, that's the stuff that you need to have emotional maturity about it and work through, right? So 5 of the things I want to walk you guys through that we go through, and I'll kind of give you guys some just verbiage that I say, and maybe kind of give you guys some examples of some conflict and working through it. Is number 1, the very first thing I wrote down is that, when you come up against conflict, or that you need to address it, right? The number 1 thing you want to do is affirm the relationship. So affirming the relationship, what does that mean? That means that, edifying that person, building them up, letting them know you honor them, letting them know that you love them, letting them know that they're an important part of the team, like that type of thing, right? And that's really, 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 really important when you do, connect with those guys, right? The second thing I want to encourage you guys to do that we write down is seek to understand. So a lot of times when people go into conflict, when they go to deal with a conflict, they go in there kind of like, reacting, going, hey, I heard you said this, so-and-so, or this, Julie said this happened, or this, this was happening. Like, people go in there kind of accusing, right? A lot of times, versus letting them know, hey, listen, like, some of the verbiage I wrote down that, like, words that I use is, like, the reason I want to talk with you is to give you a heads up, information came to me, or the word got out that, you were actually, whatever it was, or, hey, I really want to be on the same page about this. And so letting them, I always let people, like, I let people know, hey, this is what I heard. I don't go into the whole thing, but this is what I heard. Is this true? I really value you. I really honor you. I'm so glad that you're part of the team. And I want to hear your story on it. Because here's the thing, you got to give people a voice. And even if they are wrong, the fact that you hear them out says so much. It helps with trust. It helps with loyalty. It helps with them, even though sometimes they are in the wrong. The fact that they'll tell the story and they're like, no, I was wrong, or this happened. And I will tell you too, a lot of times when you do address conflict, it's interesting. Like 99% of the time, like, you're going to get an apology, because a lot of times, and it's happened to me too. I mean, there's a lot of times, like, as a leader, oh my God, you're going to apologize a lot. I mean, you just are. Because people's feelings are going to get hurt. Stuff comes up, stuff you didn't even know happened. There's times that I, we'll be at an event or something, and someone will say, oh my gosh, Sarah didn't say anything to me. I felt like she kind of brushed me off, or I felt like something happened, or whatever. And 9 times out of 10, it's because something I didn't even know. Like, I had no idea. And so I'm the first to just own up to it and say, oh my gosh, like, I had no idea. I had no idea. Right. So I've taught my team how to deal with conflict, where they'll come to me if it's about me. Right. And then I'm like, oh my gosh. And usually, guess what? 99% of the time, you're going to get that apology. It's like, oh, and sometimes you're not. I don't go into handling conflict resolution looking for an apology. I just don't. Sometimes you'll get one, and sometimes you don't. And you don't, But if you don't, what they do know is that you did address it. You stood your ground. They knew the values of this team, right? And what's accepted and what's not acceptable. And they know that, hey, even if they don't apologize, they know, like, that ain't going to work here. Right? That's just not going to work here. And I will tell you, I mean, you guys have done, a really good job of creating culture where what you're going to find is that people either A, are going to adapt to your culture, or B, they're going to weed themselves out organically. That's usually what happens, right?
Yeah.
So, so going back to that, right? So number one, affirming the relationship. Number two, seek to understand, let them feel like they have a voice, let them share, let them give the, what their side of the story or what have you. Number three would be seek to be understood. Right. So then that's when you're going to say, hey, I understand, like helping them understand. And I think too, guys, what's really important is a lot of times when situations comes up, it's really important for leaders, a lot of people, they miss this. They don't understand that most of the time it's perception versus what's really real. And even if it's not real, there's a lot of times that I have to suck it up and say sorry, or I'm just like, oh my God, I'm like, I know that I'm not wrong in this thing, but like, do I want to be right?
Yeah. Yeah. What's it worth to you?
Or do I want to make a bunch of money?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And help a team. Like, what do I want to do? And so then I'm like, all right, well, I just got to move through this then. Right. So I think too, just understanding like the helping people a lot of times understand perception too, where something might happen and say, hey, listen, I know that you probably didn't mean this because you're so kind, you're so loving yourself, but this is what came back to us. This is what came back to me. This is what's happening, or it's creating a little bit of conflict there. I know that this probably is, but this is what's happening, right? So then you're seeking to be understood to let them know. And then, what I wrote down here for number 4 is own responsibility if it is you, right? Apologize, move forward, what have you. And then number 5 would be seek agreement, right? Which I think is really important because instead of, for me personally, I want that person who I'm addressing and working through that conflict with. I don't want to go to them with a solution. I want them to be a creative thinker. So for me, if I do address this, my 2 questions that I typically ask will say, what do you think we could do about this? Right. Or
Yeah.
how do you think we should handle it? Like, what do you think that, and I will tell you, it's really important with tonality too, right? When you connect with them, where, a lot of times for me, I'm just like, hey, Christina, like, so this is what went down. This is how it happened. I know you probably didn't mean to do it. Even if they probably did, I usually say, I know you probably didn't mean to do it, but this is what's going down. Like, how do you want us to handle, like, what do you think we should do? Because we got to work through this because we have a lot of lives to change. So let's get through this and just go grow.
Yeah.
So what do you think? And then I let them tell me. Right. And I also encourage people to, like, helping them understand too, like working through conflict. Like, even if you're a newbie leader, like you can handle conflict by yourself. Like you don't have to go, upline or sponsor or what have you. I encourage people. I'm like, listen, try to work through the conflict and working through it. And sometimes you might need to maybe bring a mediator in or bring an upline or what have you to just help you work through that even a little bit more. But a lot of times I tell people, I'm like, learn to just kind of take it head on, and guys, what's great with that is it just, that experience for them, I mean, they just grow 10 times more as a leader, and it gives them confidence, and it teaches them not to shy away from it, not to be afraid of it, and know that it's just kind of part of the process. And a lot of times you're just kind of moving people through, because a lot of people don't know how to handle conflict, and not handle conflict in business, but just handle conflict in their life. Maybe they've, for a lot of people, like, it's just being a good communicator, right? Some of you guys are maybe, have a great partner and a great marriage or what have you, like, probably because there's good communication. Maybe some of you might be in not great stuff, but it might be because there's bad communication, right? And so it's just teaching people, like, no matter what, always talk about it. Like I always teach my girls, I'm like, girls, like, we can be catty and we can be all that, or like we can talk and like work through it. And like guys, we're wasting a lot of energy not doing the things that we're supposed to be doing to grow our business and talking about this crazy thing,
Yeah.
So it's just helping them, understand, like, hey, let's always communicate together. Let's always be an open book, even if we think that it might, like, if we all know that we're back to back, we love each other, and sometimes there's going to be, friction, or sometimes, like, the truth might hurt a little bit. Like, there's stuff that people have said for me that it sucked, but it was the truth. It sucked, but it was the truth. And I was like, man, I gotta just get better then, and I had to suck it up and just go, wow, like, that's really hard to swallow, but it helped me, it helped me get better, and I had some serious, like, just growing things to do. I mean, even for like myself, I'm very type A. I mean, it was probably like 11 years ago, Eric Worre sat me down and he was like, listen, I love you. 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 But you are really hard on your team. You're really hard. And you got to change that up. Otherwise you're going to drive out people that are going to potentially be amazing leaders. Either A, they're not going to put up with it, or B, like they're not going to hang out. Like, everyone's a volunteer army. And that was really hard for me to swallow, like super hard, like cried a lot. Like, it was horrible.
Yeah.
Right. But it helped me become who I am now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I've learned how to love on my team and be unconditional and know how to move people the right way and inspire them to take action and that sort of thing. Right. But I just think that for a lot of us, like, conflict resolution is stuff that nobody talks about, but it's so important because it's gonna happen and it's gonna continue to happen. But I think that, the more that we can address it head on. And I think too, guys, there's a couple of things that I wrote down that I typically will say where, I love being a woman, but I also feel like I have a love-hate relationship with women because there's so many girls that are out there that are so gossipy. You know what I mean? And I always tell people, I'm like, guys, even if you're not gossiping, but you're listening to gossip, you are gossiping. Like, you're still doing it, right? And I tell people, like, the opposite of edifying and building up and being back to back is gossip, right? So gossip is a big thing with conflict, so like conflict doesn't have to be this big, huge, crazy thing, this big, huge, crazy mass crap hit the fan situation, but it could be as simple as gossip happening, where we have to be willing to be able to stand up and not be that ostrich in the sand and say, hey, listen, like, this is what I'm hearing. Like, I love you, but like, we can't be doing that, or, a lot of times too, like, if I hear that someone is talking about somebody, I'll go to them and say, listen, obviously there's a situation here that we need to work through together. Like, have you talked to so-and-so about it? Or guys, here's the thing too, where I have people, if they come to me and they want to try to gossip about somebody, I'm always like, have you talked to them about this? Like, or I'll say, can I quote you on this?
Good for you.
Right? Or I'm like, hey, so let's get them on the phone right now, or let's get them on a Zoom and let's work through this. I mean, I literally have thrown like 5 girls on a Zoom immediately, all face to face, and we work through it. But it makes them work through it.
Yeah.
Like, you're all eyeballs on, like, let's work through this junk, let's move forward. And I think that's really important because your team just goes, wow, like, she really has our back. Like, and she really, like, culture to her is really important, and and the values of the team, and she wants us to get better, and she cares about us, and she wants to work through this, and versus just saying, hey, well, yeah, let's maybe talk. Because if you have, like, for me, instead of having all these separate conversations, I'm like, let's put everybody on and we hammer through it and then we're done.
Yeah.
So, using things like, can I quote you on that? Have you talked to so-and-so about it? Right. I also tell people, are you coming to me because you need a solution? Are you coming to me because you need me to help you help? Are you coming to me because you want me to help handle it?
Yes. I love that.
Right. Like, what do you want me to do? Right. And so, those things, like, it really stops gossip in its tracks, with us. And people know, like, I tell people too, people are like, gosh, people are always coming to me or what have you. And I'm like, well, that's because you allow it. Right. So if you feel like drama's coming to you, if you feel like, people that are like negative in your business, that are always complaining or whatever, are coming to you, it's because they know that you allow that. So you have to be willing to say, I'm not going to allow it. Love you. But we got to work through this together, push through and push past that. But, the conflict piece to me is such a big part. And, I do a lot of conflict training, like small little pieces like this all the time for people once they get to certain ranks in our business, because it is something that most people don't understand how to work through. It gives them kind of just a platform to run it, but also too, like, their eyes are open now, where they're like, oh my gosh, like, I actually give them some tools that they feel confident in using when maybe they don't have anything yet, but they will know how to handle it when the situation does arise, right? So I'll give them tools that give them confidence, to not be afraid to handle it, move forward and keep building. Because I will tell you, like, if you don't deal with conflict, you guys know what happens. It's like this small, like little, smoke fire turns into a freaking bonfire in 2 seconds, right? If people just brush it under the rug, oh, well, it will go away. Oh, don't worry about, you know what I mean? No, you need to deal with it and then, move forward. So, so that's kind of my piece on conflict.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Do you guys have any questions for Sarah? Because honestly, Sarah, like, you're right. Things show up when you need to hear them. And I'm just like, oh man, like sometimes, you see your blind spots from somebody else. And I'm just writing this stuff down, like shaking my head. But anyways, you've given us some really great tools to work through it. And I'm really happy that we're doing with this leadership because it starts with us. How we treat people, how we behave, it starts with us, and how that ripples down to everybody else. So I'm really grateful for your time and like, wow, like seriously, wow. I will ask you, so you said there was kind of 5 things, and I just want to make sure, because I got affirm relationships, seek to understand, seek to be understood, and then we probably covered them.
Own responsibility.
Own responsibility, thank you.
Right, apologize. And then 5 would be seek agreement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And you're going to apologize a lot. I mean, I'm just telling you guys as leaders, like, and there's so many times that you're just like, oh my God, I know I'm not wrong. You know what I mean? I know that it's like not me, or, oh my God, I took it the wrong way. But that's what happens. People are just going to do that. And instead of trying to correct them on it, you just have to, but it's going to help you too. It's going to help you too handle situations differently, that you're like, man, I need to be more aware, right? Of just situations that you're in and how you interact, or, just little things. And know that, being leader is awesome, but also know too that people are always watching. That's hard to swallow sometimes, right? I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, I thought this was going to be so fun. I thought all we're going to do is have fun all the time. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is like kind of serious. But it's great. I mean, it's so self-fulfilling. I mean, I think too, like, I've had a lot of people when we've walked through this whole thing with conflict resolution, they're just like, oh my God, they're like, I utilize this with my kids now. They're like, I utilize this now in my marriage and my partnership, and just, different situations that they're like, I just handle it so much better versus not really handling it, because there are a lot of people that hate conflict. I mean, they like just run, or they try to pass the buck to somebody else. Hey, talk to so-and-so, or immediately they go to their upline and they're like, you got to handle it. And it's like, no, like, let me help you work through it. Like, I do have people that will come to me that will say, hey, listen, here's the situation. This is how I was thinking I was going to handle it. These are what I wanted to say. What's your thoughts? Do you agree with that? Do you think there's something I can do better? Can you give me any tips? I might do that with people, and then I'll go handle the situation myself, type of thing. I do that, in different things with, my sponsor, if I need to. But, typically I'm kind of like, hey, Sarah, like, put on your big girl pants and go do it. Yeah. But I think too, guys, don't be afraid to put your foot down. I think too many times people are afraid to be like, you got to stand up for the team, so sometimes you might have a rotten apple in the bunch, you know what I mean? And don't be afraid to deal with that, and say, I love you, but that's not going to work here. Like, that's like, we don't do that. And like, that's it. You know what I mean? Type of thing. So, whether you have like the negative Nancy's or what have you, or whatever, I'm not afraid to address those guys and say, hey, listen, I know that you're not happy with your results because you're complaining about this, and this, but that doesn't allow you to take a dump on these guys. You know what I mean? They have dreams too. They got in this business. So it's like, if you've got stuff that you got to work through, great, let's work through it. Like, I'll help you work through it. But like, that's not fair what you were doing to those guys. Like, that's just not going to work here. Like, we don't do that. That's not our culture. Like, don't be afraid to like draw the line in the sand with people. They need, a lot of people, I mean, they really honor that, where they're like, wow, like, I'm really proud to be on this team. Mhm. Exactly. That's not true. That's true. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. It was great to connect. All right. Take care. Bye.